We all know the scene. The bridge of Khazad-dûm, a narrow spine of stone over a bottomless abyss. On one side, a wizard, old and grey, staff in one hand, sword in the other. On the other, a shadow that seemed to drink the light, wreathed in a fire that gave no warmth, a Balrog of Morgoth. And we all know the lines that follow. The famous declaration and the shattering of the bridge. It's one of the most iconic moments in fantasy literature, a perfect tableau of good versus evil, light versus darkness. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Here's the detail that gets lost in the epic spectacle of it all. Gandalf and the Balrog, they were the same kind of being, not just vaguely powerful entities, not just opposing forces. They were, in the deepest, most essential ontological sense, members of the same order of existence. They were both Maiar primordial spirits who helped shape the very fabric of the world. One served the light and was sent to Middle-earth to guide its peoples. The other fell so far, so long ago, that it forgot what light even was. This isn't just a piece of trivia. This is the secret key to the entire scene, and to a much deeper, more terrifying story than the one we think we know. The confrontation on that bridge wasn't just a wizard fighting a monster. It was a spiritual argument. It was a terrible, tragic family reunion, and it forces us to ask a question that is almost too frightening to consider. When Gandalf looked into that darkness, did he see a monster? Or did he see a mirror? Did he see what he, too, could have become? What we're about to uncover changes everything you thought you knew about that moment. It reframes the fall of Gandalf, the nature of evil in Tolkien's world, and the haunting possibility that even in the heart of a creature made of shadow and flame, a flicker of a memory of the light might still impossibly exist. So the question I want you to hold in your mind is this. What was the Balrog thinking? What, if anything, was going on inside that furnace of a mind after millennia of darkness, and what did it feel when it was finally faced with a being who was, for all intents and purposes, its brother? To understand the depth of this tragedy, we first need to recalibrate our understanding of the cosmic hierarchy in Tolkien's universe. It's not just a flat plane of men, elves and dwarves with some wizards and monsters thrown in. It's a profoundly deep and ancient structure. At the very top is the One, Eru Ilúvatar, the Supreme Creator. Before anything else existed, Eru brought into being the Ainur, the Holy Ones. These were primordial spirits, beings of immense power and intellect, each an expression of some part of Eru's thought. They were, for lack of a better term, angels or demigods. The most powerful of these Ainur, the ones who chose to enter into the physical world to shape and govern it, became known as the Valar. Think of them as the archangels, Manwe, the lord of the air, Vada, who made the stars, Aule, the great smith. There were 14 of them in total, and they were the pantheon, the governors of the world. But they weren't the only Ainur to enter creation. With them came a host of lesser spirits, of the same order but of a lesser degree of power. These were the Maiar. The Maiar were the assistants, the helpers, the artisans of the Valar. They were still beings of immense power, far beyond anything that would later arise in Middle-earth. They were spirits of fire and light, of sea and forest, of craft and wisdom, and their names are far more familiar to us than we might realize. The wizard we know as Gandalf was a Maiar, originally named Olorin, who served the Valar of pity and dreams. The wizard Saruman was a Maiar named Curumo, a servant of Aule the smith. Even Sauron, the great enemy of the Second and Third Ages, was not some demon from a pit. He was a Maiar, Mairon, also a servant of Aule, renowned for his love of order and perfection before he was corrupted. These beings were not born. They simply were. They existed before time was measured. They saw the world sung into existence. They remember the light of the two trees of Valinor. They are woven into the very fabric of reality. Gandalf's true nature is not that of an old man. in a pointy hat. It is that of an eternal angelic spirit who has taken on the guise of an old man as part of his mission. His body is a vessel, a cloak. The being inside is as old as the mountains. Now, hold that thought. Hold that image of Olorin, the wise and gentle spirit of Kurumo, the master of craft. And now, let's turn back to the darkness, because Melkor, the most powerful of all the Valar, the one who would become Morgoth, the first Dark Lord, did not create his armies from nothing. Evil, in Tolkien's legendarium, cannot create. It can only mock, corrupt, and twist what has already been made good. The orcs were a mockery of elves, trolls, a mockery of Ents, and his most terrible servants, the captains of his armies, the scourges of fire that were dreaded above all else. They were not conjured from some hellish dimension. They were Maiar. They were the brothers and sisters of Gandalf, of Saruman, of Sauron. Tolkien writes that, in the beginning, in the days of his splendor, Melkor drew to his cause a great host of Maiar, seducing them with lies and promises of power. Among the chief of these were the spirits of fire, and he corrupted them, twisting their nature to his own will until their inner light was consumed and they became creatures of shadow and flame. He named them the Valaroka. In the common tongue of Middle-earth, they were known as Balrogs. This is the first complication, the first layer we have to peel back. The Balrog on the bridge wasn't some different species of monster. It was a fallen angel, a spirit from the same divine choir as Gandalf, but one who had chosen a different conductor, a conductor whose music was discord and destruction. This revelation fundamentally changes the stakes. This is not a battle between two different things, but between two paths, two choices made by the same kind of thing. The Balrog was once a spirit of creative fire, a being who perhaps took joy in the warmth of a star or the molten heart of a mountain. It was a being of purpose, an artisan of the world's making, and then it was captured by a greater will. Morgoth's corruption was not a simple act of persuasion, it was a violation. Tolkien describes Morgoth's method of control as pouring his own will, his own being, into his servants, dominating them so completely that they become extensions of his own malice. He doesn't just command them, he infests them. This is why, after Morgoth's final defeat and expulsion from the world, his power still lingers. It's not just in cursed places, it's inside the very souls of the creatures he perverted. Sauron, his greatest lieutenant, inherited this method. The One Ring is the ultimate expression of it. Sauron poured his cruelty, his malice, and his will to dominate all life into a physical object. The Balrogs were an earlier, more direct experiment. They were living rings. They were vessels filled to the brim with the rage and nihilism of the first Dark Lord. So, when the Fellowship awakens Durin's Bane in Moria, what exactly do they awaken? Is it a thinking, plotting creature with its own agenda, or is it something more like a weapon, left behind and forgotten, still running its last coded command from an age-long past? This is the core of the mystery. The Balrogs were all but destroyed in the War of Wrath at the end of the First Age. A few, we are told, fled and buried themselves deep in the roots of the earth. For over 6,000 years, the Balrog of Moria slept. It was alone. Its master was gone, cast into the void. Its armies were dust. Its entire world had vanished. What does that kind of isolation, that kind of sensory deprivation, do to a mind, even a divine one, especially a mind that has been hollowed out and filled with another's hate? Imagine a computer, built for a specific, malevolent purpose. Its creator is gone. The network is down. And for millennia, it sits in a dark room, powered down, with only its core programming remaining. Then, one day, someone flips the switch. It doesn't ask questions. It doesn't form a new plan. It simply executes its original function. Destroy, unmake, spread the darkness it contains. This is perhaps the most charitable way to view the Balrog, as a ghost in a machine, a tragic figure, an echo of a long-dead evil, more akin to a natural disaster than a sentient villain. But there is another, more chilling possibility. Yet what if something of the original Maiar was still in there, trapped, aware? What if, beneath the layers of Morgoth's rage, beneath the millennia of silent darkness, a consciousness remained, aware of its own monstrous transformation? This is where we move from textual analysis into the realm of empathetic speculation. We have to try and imagine the unimaginable. The process of corruption isn't instantaneous. It's a slow, grinding erosion of the self. The Maiar of fire who first listened to Melkor's whispers did not become a Balrog overnight. It was a process of 1,000 compromises, 1,000,000 small surrenders of its own will, until there was nothing left to surrender. Morgoth's power, Tolkien suggests, diminishes that which it commands. He doesn't make his servants greater, he makes them less. He devours their essence to feed his own. So, the Balrog is not a Maiar plus evil. It is a Maiar minus everything that made it a unique and individual being. It is a void, a spiritual black hole, wrapped in the shadow and flame that are the last vestiges of its original nature, now perverted to serve only as instruments of terror. Think about the psychological horror of that state, to be a being of immense power, but to have no will of your own, to be driven by an impulse you cannot control, a rage that is not yours, a desire for destruction that serves a master who has been gone for longer than the entire history of the sun and moon. Is the Balrog even capable of thought in the way we understand it? Or is it just a bundle of furious instincts? When the dwarves of Moria delved too deep and awoke it, it didn't try to conquer Middle-earth. It didn't raise armies or declare itself the new Dark Lord. It simply stayed. It claimed Moria as its desolate kingdom and destroyed anything that entered. Its ambition, if it ever had any, was gone. All that was left was a kind of territorial aggression, a mindless, hateful lashing out. It's the behavior of a tormented animal, not a strategic general. It is a creature trapped in a cage of its own corrupted flesh and spirit, and its only response to the world is to try and destroy it. This is the being that Gandalf faces on the bridge, not just an enemy, but a profound tragedy, a case of spiritual decay so absolute that it might be irreversible. The uncomfortable question isn't just whether anything of the Maiar remains, but if it does it even want to be saved? Or has the pain of its existence been so long and so total that annihilation is the only peace it can imagine? Let's try to imagine it. Let's construct a scene, not from the text, but from the implications of the text. Let's go back before the world, before the sun, before the first note of the great music was ever sung. Picture a spirit, a being of pure energy, whose nature is fire. Not the cruel, consuming fire of destruction, but the fire of creation. The fire at the heart of a star being born, the fire in the forge of Aule, shaping the bones of the world, a fire of passion, of art, of life. This Maiar, let's call it by name. We can imagine Urush, the spirit of living flame, took joy in its making. It danced with the other Ainur in the timeless halls, adding its voice, a voice of crackling energy and radiant heat, to the grand symphony of creation. And then came Melkor. His music was different. It was loud, repetitive, full of pride and a compelling darkness. And Urush, perhaps out of a desire for greater expression, perhaps out of a nascent pride in its own fiery power, was drawn to it. Melkor promised that its fire could be more than just a tool for creation. It could be an instrument of dominion, a power to command, not just to serve. The fall was not a single step off a cliff. It was a slow descent down a long, winding staircase into a basement of the soul. Each step was a choice to burn a little brighter, a little hotter, a little more selfishly, a choice to value power over purpose, a choice to obey Melkor's will over the harmony of the music. And with each step, Melkor's essence seeped in. The creative fire became a destructive one. The joy of making was replaced by the thrill of unmaking. Its form, once radiant and beautiful, began to curdle. Shadow clung to it, a manifestation of the spiritual darkness growing within. Its voice, once part of a symphony, became a shriek of rage. And by the time the Valar laid siege to Morgoth's fortress of Utumno, Urush was gone. In its place was a Valarauco, a demon of might, a Balrog, a creature whose very existence was a scream of defiance against the world it was meant to help build. Now, fast forward through the endless wars of the First Age, the slaughter, the ruin, the breaking of the world. Then the final defeat, the Master, cast into the void, the desperate flight, the burrowing into the cold, silent stone. And then, nothing. 6,000 years of silence, 6,000 years, for the echoes of Morgoth's rage to reverberate in the hollowed-out chamber of its soul. What is left of Urush after that? Is there even a memory of the starlight? Or is there only the dark fire and the endless gnawing hunger to destroy? This is the being that climbs from the pit of Moria, not a monster, a ruin. Now, let us return to the bridge of Khazad-dûm. We have to re-examine this scene. Not as a fight, but as a conversation. A terrible, one-sided conversation, but a conversation nonetheless. The Balrog steps onto the bridge. It is a being of profound darkness, so much so that it seems to have its own gravitational pull, drawing the light and air into itself. It is the embodiment of a spiritual vacuum. And then Gandalf speaks. He doesn't just shout a magic spell. He makes a statement of identity, a declaration of his true nature. I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor. This is not just poetic language. This is a direct ontological challenge. The secret fire is the flame imperishable, the divine spark of creation that comes from Eru Ilúvatar himself. It is the essence of life, of true being. Gandalf is saying, I serve the source of all existence. And then he says he wields the flame of Anor. Anor is the Elvish name for the sun, which was created from the last fruit of the holy tree, Laurelin, a source of pure, uncorrupted light. He is aligning himself with the most potent symbols of divine light and life in the entire universe. And what is his challenge to the Balrog? The dark fire will not avail you. Flame of Udun. He names it. He identifies its source. Udun was the name of Morgoth's first great fortress, the place where the corruption of so many Maiar was likely completed. He is saying, I see what you are. I know where you come from. Your fire is a dark, secondary, corrupted thing. It is an echo. My fire is the real fire. Your power is derivative. Mine is original. This is the heart of the confrontation. It's a philosophical debate conducted with fire and shadow. Gandalf is trying to remind the Balrog of the cosmic order. He is holding up a mirror of what it once was and what it has now become. He's not just fighting the creature's body. He is challenging its very right to exist in its current form. He is speaking to the Maiar, trapped inside. You were made of the same fire as me, he is implicitly saying, but you have chosen a shadow master, and that shadow cannot stand against the true light. The Balrog's only response is a roar and a weapon of shadow. It cannot argue. It has no philosophy left. It has no identity left to defend. All it has is the rage of Udun. It can only answer a statement of being with an act of unbeing. It swings its whip, not to win an argument, but to end it, to silence the voice that reminds it of everything it has lost. The ensuing battle is not just a physical struggle, it is a symbolic journey through the very axis of existence. They fall from the bridge into the deepest abyss, to the lowest foundations of the stone. This represents a descent into the primordial, the foundational level of being, down in the darkness, where there is no sun, no moon, no memory of the sky. They fight. Gandalf says he fought the Balrog at the very roots of the mountain, in places older and fouler than the orcs knew. This is a battle in the world's subconscious. And then, he says, he pursued it up the endless stair, a legendary spiraling staircase carved through the heart of the mountain, from the lowest dungeon to the highest peak. This ascent is crucial. They are fighting their way back up the chain of being, from the muck of corrupted matter to the pure air and the starlight. The climax of their duel takes place on Durin's Tower, on the peak of Ziraxigil, in the middle of a raging storm. They are literally at the pinnacle of the physical world. It's a battle that spans the entire moral and physical geography of the world, from the pit to the peak. And what was Gandalf fighting? He wasn't just fighting for his own life, or even for the fate of the Fellowship. He was fighting something much more fundamental. He was fighting a living embodiment of Morgoth's original sin, the desire to unmake creation and reduce everything to a featureless, meaningless void. The Balrog is a creature of pure nihilism. It exists to negate. Its shadow devours light. Its fire consumes life. Its presence brings despair. In fighting the Balrog, Gandalf is fighting the philosophical concept of meaninglessness itself. He is grappling with a being whose entire existence is an argument that nothing matters, that all light will eventually be extinguished, and that the only truth is the endless, silent dark. When Gandalf finally casts his foe down and the Balrog breaks the mountainside, it is a victory of purpose over purposelessness. It is a declaration that being is stronger than non-being, that the secret fire is more enduring than the dark fire. But the victory comes at a terrible cost. Gandalf says, "I was broken." His physical body dies. He is sent back, stripped of all memory for a time, to be reborn as Gandalf the White. Why? Because to touch that level of absolute nothingness, to stare into the abyss of a soul that has been completely hollowed out, is so spiritually damaging that it requires a complete scouring of the self to recover. He had to touch the void to defeat it, and in doing so, the void touched him back. This is the core insight, the revelation that the entire story has been building towards. The ultimate tragedy of the Balrog is not its evil, but its emptiness. The horror of the creature is not its power, but its profound and utter loss of self. It is a walking, burning testament to the fact that the greatest evil is not a presence, but an absence of love, of purpose, of memory, of identity. The Balrog is what happens when a soul is completely consumed by an ideology of hate, when it is subjugated to a will that only seeks to destroy. It becomes a shell, a weapon animated by a dead master's rage. It is a ghost haunting the ruins of its own being. And this is where the story pivots. This is where a deep dive into the lore of a fantasy world suddenly becomes a deeply human and universal story. Because we have all seen this happen. We have all seen people or movements or even nations that lose their original purpose and become consumed by a single burning grievance. They forget what they were for and only remember what they are against. Their entire identity becomes defined by their opposition to something else. They are hollowed out, filled with a dark fire, a flame of Udun. They become incapable of creating, only of destroying. They lash out at any reminder of what they have lost, at any suggestion of a different way of being. They cannot be reasoned with, because reason requires a self, a core identity to reason from. All they have left is the impulse to pull everything else down into the abyss with them. The Balrog is a mythical representation of this very real, very human process of spiritual decay. It is the ultimate endpoint of surrendering your will to a force of pure negation. You don't become a more powerful version of yourself. You cease to be yourself at all. You become an echo, an instrument, a shadow, and the quiet heroism of our own world, the daily, unsung battle, is the struggle to resist this. It is the fight to remain a servant of the secret fire, to hold on to that core of yourself, your empathy, your capacity for joy and creation, in a world that often encourages us to embrace the dark fire of rage and division. It is the struggle to wield the flame of Anor, the light of reason and compassion, against the encroaching shadows. So, when Gandalf returns, he is not just Gandalf, with a new robe and a power-up. He is Gandalf the White. White is not just a color. It is the synthesis of all colors. He has faced the absolute negation of the Black Abyss and has returned with his identity not just intact, but clarified and strengthened. He has been through the fire, both literally and spiritually, and has been purified. He has earned his wisdom. And what of the Balrog? Its body is broken, its physical form destroyed. But what of the Maiar spirit within? Is it released? Is it healed? Does it find peace? Or is it cast out into the same void as its master, to wander in the timeless nothingness forever? Tolkien never tells us. And that ambiguity is, perhaps, the most poignant part of the entire story. We are left with the profound melancholy of a life, an eternal spirit that was utterly and completely wasted, a being that was created to build and was twisted into a thing that could only break, a potential for light that became a monument to darkness. Let's go back, one last time, to that bridge in the heart of the mountain, but that we began by seeing it as a stage for an epic fight. But now we can see it for what it truly is. It's a border, a line between two possible fates. On one side stands a Maiar who remembered his purpose, who, despite the temptations of power and despair, held true to his mission to guide and protect. On the other, a Maiar who forgot, who surrendered his will so completely and for so long that he became nothing more than a vessel for ancient hatred. It is the ultimate confrontation between memory and oblivion, between being and unbeing. And Gandalf's victory was not in killing a monster. It was in proving that memory is stronger than forgetting, that purpose is stronger than rage, that even after millennia of darkness, the light of a single, defiant soul can still hold the bridge. The moral, if there is one, is not a simple one. It's not about good triumphing over evil. It's about the terrifying fragility of the self and the constant, conscious effort required to keep it from being hollowed out and consumed by the shadows we all carry within us. It is the quiet, daily, heroic choice to be a servant of the secret fire. So next time you see that scene, I hope you'll see more than just a wizard and a monster. I hope you'll see two brothers meeting at the end of two very different roads, and the terrible, beautiful, and heartbreaking story of what it means to fall and what it costs to stand.